friends, it's Michelle from Little Farm in the Valley. So this colossal project that I have in front of me, and this is only half the apples. I've already peeled the other half. So what we're making is apple pie filling. And this is not quite as simple as applesauce. We just did applesauce, and all we had to do for the applesauce was quarter the apples, and we cored some of them, but most of them we didn't because we ran it through a juicer or a sauce maker. So, but this apple pie filling project is going to be a little bit more difficult. Well, not so much difficult as more time consuming. This is why I'm getting a start ahead of time. So as you can see, I am quartering the apples, then I'm going to peel the skin. And like I said, I've already done half of them. So if I get in a hurry here, I think I'm going to stop peeling them, except for the bad spots, which this is a particularly bad apple. So I would probably for sure take the bad spots off. And then once I'm done peeling all the apples, I have them in water to keep them from browning. What we're going to do is slice these apples to make our pie filling. So very, very time consuming, especially with all of the apples we have. So I actually can't even tell you what variety this is. These were just given to us by a neighbor, and their tree has been in their family for so long that they didn't even know what the variety is. All they knew was these are baking apples. So, and they do taste really good. They have a sweet taste. So not worried at all about using these apples for all kinds of fall things and apple preserves. So yeah, today's project is, well, tomorrow's project is going to be apple pie filling. And we will take you through how to do that. I think we're gonna freeze some and can some. So it'll be quite the time consuming project, which is why I'm getting an early start. So once I was done with all the apples, I put them in some water overnight just to help with the apples not browning. Anyway, the next morning I decided that I do not have time to slice all of these apples. There's no way. So I ended up taking the food processor and putting in the not the shredding blade, the slicing blade, and putting these apples through. So it did a great job with the apples that I did yesterday, but the ones from the day before were already kind of brown and mushy. So it kind of just made a little almost scrap-like pieces of them. So I wasn't quite impressed with that, but hey, when you're in a hurry, that's just what happens when you have 3 little kids underfoot and you're trying to get a head start on things. But since this is just apple pie filling and it's all going to be chopped up and cooked in the end, it's fine. So we put them through, and I was making tally marks on a notepad, and I think we got 11 gallons of these apples. So I will share the recipe that we use, but we doubled, tripled, quadrupled this recipe so often. It was a massive amount of sugar. We're measuring the sugar into our 15-gallon stock pot, and we just looked at each other and are like, is this right? This much sugar? But remember, we have 11 gallons of apples. So we did add what we figured out on the calculator as much sugar, but it just seemed like a colossal amount of sugar. So we're doing the sugar, the water, some of the other ingredients are there. You can see what the apples look like coming out of the chopper. So that's why we chose not to do the first step in the recipe, which would have been to cook them for like a second in boiling water, but we decided not to do it. So we're just filling our pot here with measuring the water. And then some of the other ingredients are a bunch of spices. And like I said, I'll post a photo of the recipe, but we're just measuring in the spices. And then lemon juice and an ingredient called clear gel, which is like a cornstarch type thing, except it's not cornstarch, it's clear gel, but it acts as a thickening agent like your cornstarch would. And there's a note on the recipe if you want to omit it, you can. So we actually measured and actually ran out for how many apples we had. We did not have enough clear gel, but we just added all of the clear gel that we had. And the recipe gives you an option of, if you think your pie filling is a little bit too runny, you can heat it in a pot before you make your pie. take it out of the jar and heat it, and then add more cornstarch or more clear gel. So once we make our first pie, we'll see how that goes. So what we're doing is we're heating all of this up, and then we're just going to fold in the apples once this comes to a boil. So we're not really cooking the apples. The apples have been processed enough, except we're just going to can the filling when we're done. So we're getting our jars ready and our water bath canner and all that good stuff. So our filling has really thickened up. Even though we didn't have the amount of clear gel that the recipe asked for, it actually ended up being a pretty thick filling. So we took the filling hot and filled it right into our jars, and then we water bathed it for 25 minutes. And that was for quarts. We actually filled some half gallons. So we didn't really know. The recipe doesn't give a time for half gallons, so we just added like 10 minutes and did about 30 to 35 minutes for the processing of the half gallons. So we're making sure to not overfill these, since we're a little bit afraid of that clear gel almost expanding because it's a thickener. So we're going to take some out of some of these jars to leave like an inch of headspace, maybe more. We overfilled some, as you can see, so we're trying to do a good job of wiping those rims. We tasted the filling and we felt like the nutmeg was a little bit much, but we just measured everything according to this recipe, so it remains to be seen if we're going to like it. I guess if not, we can make some notes and make changes next year if we make this again. But we're getting our lids on and our rings, and then we're going to water bath it at 25 minutes per quart. It came out just beautifully. I am so excited about this apple pie filling project. We did a bunch of half gallons because we were running low on jars, so I'm not sure if that's just going to make one pie or if the half gallons are going to be for an extra big pie. We really have no idea, but we'll see in a few days when we make a pie. So today I'm going to put this apple pie filling to the test. Boy, my apron needs a wash right before tomato season, I guess, would be a good time, right? Okay, so let me set up so you guys have a view of what I'm doing. So I opened 2 jars of the pie filling because my pie plate is rather large. So this is 1 jar. You can see it looks nice and thick in there. So this pie plate, I would say, is probably a 9-inch. So just for good measure, I opened 2 of them because I have a feeling 1, it would have been okay, but 2 would really make a nice full pie. So it did some avocado spray on my pie plate. And I have my dough, or my crust, I mean. Start with a bigger crust for the bottom. I do my pie dough, or my pie crusts. I make a bunch at a time, and this is how I put it in the freezer, individually wrapped. So this morning I felt like doing apple pie, so I just grabbed a couple out, and it's been an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half, and they're nice and thawed, easy to work with. Still cold enough to keep a nice shape, not be just melting lard and butter all over the place. So that's perfect. It's really rolling itself out beautifully. And I have a little bit of extra because that top one looks a little small. So I'll stretch this one out as big as I can and take the excess in case I need it. Get that pressed in there really nicely. ideally you want to try and flatten out the air bubbles. In case I need to trim stuff, I'll put my knife over here. This one looks like, yeah, it looks like it was just extra from a pie. So sometimes when I have quite a bit of extra, I'll just throw that in the freezer as well. So this is dough that I'm probably using for the second time here. So this is usually a little bit tougher, and I can tell it's smaller. So we'll see if we need to add something to it. It still rolls itself out pretty good. So I might need to patch in. I can't roll it out enough. For a smaller pie, I think it would have worked perfect. For this big one, I might be stretching it. It's got a hole, so I'll have to patch that. But you can do whatever you want with pie dough. It's like putty in your hands. That looks like it'll do. Okay, so now for the filling, let's see. This is the smallmouth jar. I didn't really want to use smallmouths, but I can see that it's not going to be an issue. Coming out very nicely. Nice and thick. There was a note on the recipe saying if you wanted to omit that clear gel before making a pie, you would have had to put that in a pot and warm it and add your clear gel or cornstarch at that point. Doesn't look like I'm going to need to do that. This one looks even thicker. But yeah, that'll make a nice full pie. Like I said, it would have worked just using one, but I had a feeling I would need two to make a really nice full pie. But I did those half-gallon jars. So I guess now I'll know a half-gallon jar fills this plate up nicely. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit of water. So I'm gonna use water to seal the edges of my pie, to help seal the edges, because with a pie this full, you might have some running over. Normally in this top, I would, kind of forgot, to poke some air holes in. But there's already one hole here. So let's seal this other side. Okay, now we'll trim off some of the excess. The scissors works better. My kitchen scissors. So I won't trim off all of it. I'm leaving maybe ½ inch. And this crust that I'm trimming off, I could put it back in the freezer. I'll see how much it is. If it's, you know, a pretty good handful, it's kind of hard to throw that away, because, you know, tomorrow you could be making a pie where you need just that little bit of extra. And you're like, oh no, I just threw some away the other day. And a lot of times, my plastic's still laying here, so why not? I mean, this is a good chunk. This would almost make another top. So I'll save that. Usually I can tell when I am rolling it out whether it's leftover dough. So now I'm just going to roll this onto the top here. You can see these are both my top and my bottom that I'm trying to seal. Doesn't always go the way you hope. even if you seal it, you can still have some pie baking out and bubbling over. So the recipe said to bake this pie, I believe it said at 400 for an hour. I have just been baking pies lately at 350 a lot of times when I have something else in the oven. So I'm like, the oven's going anyway, let's throw in a pie. So I've kind of gone more by just watching my pie, and if it's a nice golden brown, I'll take it out. So could very well be that that's what I'm going to do today. Just put my oven on 350 or 370 and keep an eye on it. A little bit sloppy there. So you could leave it like this, or you could crimp it, give it kind of that attractive pie look. Now my plate kind of has the crimps on there, so I think if I just pressed it down, if you have a plate that doesn't have a crimp, crimping is very easy. You just take your fingers and give it little crimps, just like so. I guess since I started, I just as well crimp the whole thing. So this is all ready to bake now. I know I'm really gonna love this apple pie filling. Probably gonna make this again next year. And if it tastes as good as it smells, then it's gonna be a win-win. So since we've been working here in this flour, I like to take my pie plate and run it over a rag so that bottom is clean. Collect that flour. So when we tasted the pie filling right out of the pot, I thought the nutmeg flavor was a little bit strong. I considered putting a note on my recipe to add less nutmeg, but it'll be interesting to see when this pie is ready and baked if it's gonna bother me. So otherwise it was absolutely delicious. Okay, so this is ready to bake. This is a heavy pie. And we got 2 quarts of filling in here. So I put my pie in at 350 along with some supper that I was baking and pulled it out when I felt like it was ready. So now we're going to let it cool down. Beautiful looking pie, and I only had a little bit of filling bubble out, so I must have done a pretty good job at sealing. Right now that our pie's had a chance to cool off, I'm gonna try it. So there's my piece of apple pie. It's got so many apples in there that it's got a hard time keeping it under the pie crust. But it looks amazing. It is so good. And that nutmeg is not as overpowering once the pie is baked. The crust is amazing, flaky, and just a really flavorful, fall tasting apple pie. I just love it. And the fact that this is all in my canning pantry, ready to grab whenever I feel like baking a pie, that's the best part. So anyway guys, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a video, and we will talk to you soon.